I had to begin from below the bottom after I was released from prison and then just work my way up. It was one hell of a challenge. I mean, this is 1985, so it's a long time ago, but awful as that was, that's kind of what I'm talking about by everything's going to be okay. Even my family said my life was over. I decided it wasn't. So I just kept putting one foot in front of the other and looking for opportunities and acting as if I'm going to walk the walk. If I wanted something, I had to be that person first before it could actually come to me. So I decided to be able to be that person.
Welcome to Successful with ADHD. I'm Brooke Schnittman, and if you have ADHD and are feeling overwhelmed, chaotic, and negative self-beliefs, you're in the right place. The Successful with ADHD podcast shares my guests' journeys of overcoming challenges, offering their tips and strategies for success to empower you to take control of your life and thrive with ADHD. Let's get started. Hey, Danny.
Brooke, good morning. Track
morning.
of dawn in Los Angeles.
Yes, it's always amazing to see your face. Thank you for joining us on Successful with ADHD, where we shine a light on the successes of people with ADHD.
My pleasure, Brooke. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So, Danny, share with me a little bit about your journey with ADHD. Like, when were you diagnosed?
Okay. Well, the diagnosis has been within the last 7 or 8 months. But now that I'm learning a bit about ADHD, my behavior in my life was completely reflective of having, if not that diagnosis, some other diagnosis since I was a kid, going as far back as grade school.
Oh, yeah.
If I liked a topic, I was like voracious. There was nothing I couldn't learn. There was nothing I couldn't remember. If I was bored with it, it was like, okay, please shoot me now.
I hate this so much.
Yeah.
So the diagnosis
Trigonometry.
You know, I like math. Math and science are my jam. English social studies. I know you're more of an English social studies person with your politician background, but I'm sure you'll go there.
Yeah, there's so many.
Many things.
With me, there's so many different areas to go into. So let's explore.
Yeah, let's do it. So it's been a number of years, but you have many different children. You have quite a history that I think a lot of listeners would be interested in hearing about, because you have transformed throughout all those years. And you're 67, right?
I am 67.
Yeah. So people listening want to hear. Tell us a little bit about your huge history.
Wow. Pick a spot, any spot. I've been married and divorced 5 times. My last wife died in a car accident about 5 years ago. I have 6 children. Now there's a qualifier there. I have 3 biological children, and I have 3 children that were actually Colleen, my last wife who died in the car accidents, children that after she is gone, I've taken over a portion of the responsibility as a father there. So
Sure.
We got all of them. My oldest daughter is 47. Yes, it was high school. Thank you. And my youngest yesterday was 26 years old. That's James. So it's kind
Happy
of
birthday, James.
Yeah. He was pretty pleased with himself. He really was most interested in what the present was going to be. And when I told him it was cash, that made his day.
Duh.
Yeah.
He can buy whatever he wants with it now.
Well, pretty much.
And he also likely has an ADHD diagnosis, correct?
Most likely. James had a brain bleed at birth. It was pretty touch and go. He died in my arms 6 or 7 times at the 3rd hospital on the day he was born. We finally got into surgery, and we spent 8 weeks in intensive care in New York City. So
Wow.
He's had PT. He's got a diagnosis of cerebral palsy. He's very high functioning.
Yeah.
He's a jokester. He's got a great social skills, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And he's recovered completely because of the consequences of the surgery. He lost about half of his cerebellum, as you know. It's in the back of the brain.
Yep.
It does a number of things, including learning in part.
Mm-hmm.
But people think of the cerebellum often for movement. James doesn't have that problem. He was an incredible wrestler. He's got it going on. So it's interesting. But I think it's been hard to tease out whether it was what happened to him or ADHD. I think it's a pretty interesting combination.
Yeah, a lot of the symptoms blend into one another, the brain injury and the lack of executive functioning
Right.
with ADHD.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, they're both brain injuries,
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
abnormalities.
Yeah. Okay. 6 children, married 5 times. What else? With ADHD, we have that interesting piece with relationships. We get very excited about new relationships, and then the dopamine can wear off very quickly, and we might want to move on to the next thing.
Are you just dropping the breadcrumbs for this one so that I get it? Yeah, I not dissimilar from what I said about me and academics. Me and relationships were very similar. If I was on, I was very on. I could be seeming a little crazy, hopefully in a good way, but very committed, very into it, and then accelerate a year or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, and things were sort of fading away. Yes. So throughout my life, 5 marriages is really I wouldn't wish that on anybody. There's a lot of things about that are just very difficult. But now that I know about my ADHD, it kind of fits because, I would ruminate and obsess and then start losing sleep. And the more I lost sleep, the worse I got. It's all of my life was about understanding how to fake it so that I didn't appear crazy, or not too often. I became very good at that. I think that was my original actor's training.
And when you say crazy, you don't mean crazy. You mean you would mask your ADHD symptoms. Is that correct?
Yes. No, I wasn't crazy, but I could certainly appear to be
different,
in a different space than the people around me
that might not understand.
Right. I'd be talking faster. I mean, it could be an incredible high too. I'm not bipolar, but I certainly know what a manic state is. And I honestly, I loved my manic states. Very high productivity. The brain is working flawlessly, and then can shift. This is a tangent, excuse me, but then it can shift to not the brain, not being able to remember much.
Yeah. So that you had that dopamine rush, that hyperfixation, the hyperfocus, and then you'd crash.
Right. Right. And now I've learned a lot about how I can manage that, manage my dopamine, understand my state more quickly. I've always, when something feels wrong, and I'm going to say this jokingly, but I always feel like I have brain cancer. This is it. It's over. So like a bad comedy. And then suddenly, at times, 2 or 3 days later, I'll go, oh, is that what that is? It's just my dopamine is off. Go get some sun, go get some exercise, move yourself, find something that's interesting, play a game, challenge yourself.
Yeah. And sometimes it takes longer to realize that than other times, depending on your emotional state and what's going on outside. If the weather is bad, if the weather is good, where you're at. But love that you have those tools that you can rely on and that awareness of how your brain is working.
I'm a bit of an athlete. What I could do, both physically and emotionally, is absolutely exhaust myself trying to figure this out, which I found it's a hard hole to come up from. Once you're exhausted, you're exhausted. So it takes a lot of intention, a lot of focus to get out the door and go in the sun, take a walk, all those things that they seem so ridiculously challenging.
It's exhausting.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, when you're depleted, even, moving from a couch can seem difficult.
Right. Right. I have a very large dog, and every once in a while she has to move me. She comes in, she pokes her nose in my ribs.
So she's your accountability partner.
She's always my accountability partner. She's my partner in life.
Oh, she's your stability partner.
Well, don't go too far. That would imply that I'm stable.
Oh, stop. So if you couldn't tell by listening, Danny does stand-up comedy. And yes, I'm talking about you in third person.
Yes, he does. It's even
Yes,
better
he
to talk
does.
about myself in third person.
Yeah, yeah. So tell us a little bit more. So you are an actor. Tell us about some of the big accomplishments. So you have 6 kids. That's a huge accomplishment.
Had 6 kids. I began acting just before I turned 50. Within 2 years, I was a SAG member, which requires some success in the business to do.
Congratulations.
Thanks. And I've been in, I guess, many TV shows. I lived in New York then. It was a different environment. Now the entertainment business has changed a little bit, but I'm happily still a SAG member. I'm a working actor. Many of my friends are actors. But on the flip side, if you want to see the other side of my brain, I've been a very successful businessman for, God, am I going to say this? About 50 years.
Right.
Yeah, because I
probably even before then.
Yeah, always had little businesses, but I actually formally started a business when I was 17, running ski trips up to Stowe, Vermont.
Of course you were. You were the little salesman.
I was the trip lead, the trip driver, and a few times I had a van, and 5 or 6 of us would sleep overnight in my Ford van in the parking lot at Stowe. And it would be so cold when we woke up, there would be icicles inside the van from the moisture of our breathing. It was pretty spectacular.
To say the least.
But then we'd go ski all day like crazy people. We'd challenge one another, talk about ADHD. We challenge one another as to how many runs we could get in any given day. If there was 2 cars, there might be 7 of us or 8 of us, but there would be at least 4. And we'd get 20, 25 runs in a day, and that takes some work.
Yeah, to say the least.
Speaking of obsessive.
So you started as a businessman officially at age 17, so 50 years ago.
Yep.
And
wow.
Yeah, so you are a jack of all trades, or a Danny of all trades. So you are a successful salesperson / business person. You are an actor. You are a dad. What else?
I was the co-founder of 3 nonprofits, all dealing with homelessness and to some degree or another. The primary one was Epiphany House in New Jersey, which is a facility with numerous locations now that is for recovering from alcohol and drugs, women and their children who also are homeless. So
wow.
Epiphany House has directly assisted, I'm sure it's over 2,000 families now, where we gave them shelter for a period of time and helped them get their lives organized and got into living situations that were positive for them.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
It's one of my favorite things to have been a part of.
Yeah, you are definitely an empathetic person who gives back.
Try to.
Yeah. So you're definitely well-rounded, and you got your coaching certification in nutrition too, correct?
Yeah, from SUNY, State University of New York, via the Institute for Integrative Nutrition.
And you also had a consulting business.
I did. It was probably more of a teaching position. I was hired by medium-sized technology companies, generally under 250 million in revenue, often less than 600 employees. I would be brought in as a fixer. If there were a problem in sales, I'd probably start in sales, because companies notice first that there's a problem when sales go down. Now, they very often assume that if sales goes down, their salespeople are no good. More often than not, that might be part of it, but it's not really what's going on. It's, at least in the tech business, it's what your product, what's in development.
The messaging.
Marketing, certainly. And who's going to be interested in that in it, and have you really thought it through? A lot of companies, and generally the type of companies that would be my clients would have been in business 25 or 30 years. So they would become a little dated in their view of who their market was.
Mm-hmm.
So I was the fresh blood that would sort of begin a process inside the company that would allow them to look more specifically at who their audience was now and who their other audiences could be if they did a few pretty smart things. So I worked on the smart things.
Yeah. And the fact that you weren't emotionally tied to the company definitely gave you an edge on having, well, first of all, your background was in that too, but it gave you an edge on being able to see more clearly. You were out of the weeds rather than the company that was emotionally tied and in the weeds.
Definitely. I look back and going back to your first question, this is a situation where there was pressure, there were large stakes, and everybody was like, their hair was on fire and running a particular direction. That was heaven for me.
Yeah.
Crisis management, got to do it. Oh, so we had some good successes there too.
Absolutely. Putting out fires, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Your number one go-to.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe I should have been a firefighter, huh?
Maybe. Hey, it's never too late to do anything.
Okay. We need firefighters here in California.
So yeah, tell us about how you are successful. You did say that you run on problems, like you thrive when there's new problems, right? That you need to solve.
Right.
What else?
I love coaching people. I've coached hundreds of salespeople in my career, and it's not what you might think. And everybody knows that there's all these canned things that kind of get popularity at one point and not at another, all these ways and methods of doing it. But my opinion is that even though many good ideas are there, they're all very tactical. And I think if you want to repair a salesperson, you've got to go pretty strategic. And I mean that interpersonally. It becomes about our psyche and what it means to us. And simple things like, do you have a balanced life? Or are you working constantly under the pressure? Because sales, for example, is endless. It's a crazy thing. You work like hell for an entire quarter. You make your number. Then the next day, you've got to start over
from zero.
It can seem to be insanity. It can be fun insanity. And I'm a big fan of injecting fun into pretty much everything. Play works for kids. Play works for adults. And if you can make it a game, oh my God, where did that come from? It helps me as an ADHD guy, and it helps everybody. It relaxes the part of the brain that tends to get blocked when there's constant pressure. Chemically, there's a lot of cortisol and many other things that get too complicated for me to go through. But I love teasing out what makes someone perform and helping them get there.
So essentially, you help people stop taking themselves too seriously too.
Well, yeah, that's definitely part of it, because when you're under constant pressure, that becomes your life. And it's even if you thrive on it a bit, there's an end day to that. So the best performers find ways to
make light,
get out of it. Yeah. It's a challenge, but it can be done.
Yeah. So how do you balance your life?
I balance my life through meditation, exercise. I try to write quite a bit. Being a writer, I'm always creating a story in my head. And so doing things like that are a great relaxation to me. Plus, I love being around people. You probably don't know this, but I'm an extrovert. Give me a room with 200 people in it that I haven't met, and give me a couple of hours, and I'll be in heaven. I will have met everyone. I'll have pretty deep conversations with at least 12 of them, and probably make 4 friends. That's how my body, my brain works.
So it energizes you by being around people.
Yes, absolutely. That's why for me, and I think many others, it's why the pandemic was so poisonous.
Totally. I mean, it caused depression in many people because we are social beings. Even if you're an introvert, you still need people.
Yes. You do.
I know in the work that we've done together, there have been days where you haven't gotten yourself out there and been around people, right?
Absolutely. No, I didn't mean to imply that I can execute on all this stuff. Oh, no, quite to the contrary. What I'm able to do now is because of how poorly I was doing previously because I didn't have any tools.
Yeah. And what I've seen that I don't know if you've said is that some of the reminders to yourself, like they're more intrinsic now than extrinsic. I don't feel good. I don't feel right. Okay. Well, why do I not feel right? What am I not doing
Yeah.
that usually helps?
Yes. Yes. And, speaking of funny again, in that evolution of thinking, I can say, Danny, it's not brain cancer. It's probably a cold. And I can have a good laugh at myself. They're always the best.
So you're not catastrophizing the situation and you're making light.
What is the point? I mean, I've studied Buddhism for many years, and that is as un-Buddhist as you can get, because
Absolutely.
A lot of it is just acceptance of what is, but that means what actually is. So
yes.
No, it's not brain cancer.
And you definitely have a growth mindset. Like you are probably one of the most comfortable people I know who is comfortable with the uncomfortable, not knowing what's next.
Right. Yeah. I've had a life where that has happened often. That impermanence, that lack of assuredness as to what's next was just part of me ever since I was a little kid.
Sure.
I was adopted. I always felt, I didn't know that then, but always felt a lot of impermanence. So it became just a normal part of my life.
Interesting. So not knowing what's next has pretty much been ingrained in you from birth.
Yes. Yes. I have a pretty good education, but I think I'm far more educated
and adaptable
from the street. Well, there are things that happened in my life that just absolutely required me, if I was to survive, to be able to adapt and to thrive.
Yeah.
So I haven't done that flawlessly, but I've done it.
Yeah. So Danny, you have nurture and nature, right? And nothing happens in vacuum, right? Nothing is just straight up nature. Nothing is just straight up nurture. You've been adopted. You recently got diagnosed with ADHD. Your history, your upbringing makes you who you are today.
Definitely. Yes. Good and bad.
And all the in between.
Yes.
What would be the one thing that you would want people here to take away from your experience so far?
It's all going to be okay. It just is.
Yeah. It will be. It will be. And we might not be able to forecast that. We might not be able to vision that. And when we're emotional, it's so hard to see that, right? We have that all or nothing mindset, then now or and not now, especially in children who are egocentric, but it's just a season.
First of all, I can't believe I'm 67. It's like, how did this happen? But I've had enough decades and cycles here. A lot has happened in my life. And then just before I turned 30, I went to prison after being a golden boy in politics and being in the White House. And it was quite an amazing drop for me in my life. I thought politics would be my path to success. And it was there for a while. And it's apparently pretty different that today you can do pretty much anything and be successful at politics. But back then, you become radioactive.
We don't talk politics here, Danny. This is strictly an ADHD podcast.
Right. So, and yeah, it's not what's going to happen for him. It wasn't what was going to happen for me anyway. That was not the future. I had to begin from below the bottom after I was released from prison and then just work my way up. It was one hell of a challenge. I mean, this is 1985. So it's a long time ago.
Yeah.
But
37 years ago.
As awful as that was, it's kind of what I'm talking about by everything's going to be okay. Even my family said my life was over. I decided it wasn't.
Mm.
So I just kept putting one foot in front of the other and looking for opportunities and pretending, acting as if I'm going to walk the walk. If I wanted something, I had to be that person first before it could actually come to me. So I decided to be able to be that person.
Wow. So you were told repetitively through life experience and through people that you're not good enough, you're not going to make it. And you proved them wrong.
It certainly seems that way.
Yeah.
I have a different life than what they forecasted for me. I'm mostly doing what I want. I'm at a point in time in my life I've expressed myself as a father and a businessman, but also as an artist. I love being able to just drop into the next character and explore what that is from the inside and be able to express that on camera or on stage and make it realistic enough for people to suspend disbelief and for those few moments actually be with that character as a person, not with me, but with the character. As an artist, I don't think it gets any better than that.
So I'm going to pose a challenging question here.
Go for it.
Are you acting right now?
You mean in this conversation?
In life?
No, I think there are certainly times where it is more helpful to only bring out certain parts of one's personality. Sometimes that's just, just a little discernment. But in terms of, that's an interesting question. Thank you for taking that. For much of my life, certainly prior to prison, it was all a performance. I knew where I wanted to go, and I assumed I knew how to get there. So there really was no me. I was this thing that I had created that I believed would make me safe when I was a child, or make me get the next good job in my 20s, or help me win elective office in my late 20s and early 30s, the late 20s. I don't do that anymore. What you're seeing now, I mean, it's fun to be on camera and there's, the affect can be slightly different, but what you see is what you get. This is
You're
me.
authentically you.
I am.
And that, my friend, is what makes you successful.
I hope so. I like being me.
Well, no one else can be you, right?
Yeah, God help them.
So Danny, it's so nice that you got to that vulnerability that I was hoping you would get to for the audience, because for those who are listening, I know that this is going to resonate with someone out there who is masking or who's had a past that they might not be too happy of, but they are looking for what's next and like looking for hope in their successes with ADHD. And for prison, I believe that the statistics are 50% of people in prison have ADHD, and it's unmanaged ADHD. You didn't know you had it at that time.
No, I had no idea.
Yeah.
I was just trying to get by. I felt something was working. I just kept doing it. And that was some areas that was helpful. It wasn't in drinking and all the things that were going on with me at that time.
Sure. So for the parents out there who have children who might be going down a path that you didn't want them to, or for adults who are seeking help in themselves, like look at Danny's experience. He is the perfect example of someone who has defeated all odds. He's been adopted. He's been told he's not good enough. He's been incarcerated. He has tried many different career paths and been successful, but it just wasn't the right thing for him. And he is a well-liked, sociable guy who is making a difference in other people's lives, has a growth mindset, and most importantly, is happy with himself, right?
Yes. Yes. I have my moments, but
Of
generally
course.
speaking, absolutely. I'm more focused on finding more of myself.
You never find enough of yourself. You are an information junkie.
I am.
Yeah.
I have quite an appetite for that.
As you should. As
Yeah.
you should.
Yeah.
Well, Danny, it's been a pleasure having you on,
Brooke, you're the best.
as are you.
Thank you.
And I look forward to our continued conversation.
You bet. Can't wait.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Successful with ADHD. I hope it helped you on your journey. And if you need any additional support for you or a loved one with ADHD, feel free to reach out to us at coachingwithbrooke.com and all social media platforms at Coaching with Brooke. And remember, it's Brooke with an E. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.